Good, man.
All right, we're going to start recording here. We have Elise and Jeremiah, and we're doing our 5th class, halfway through. And what I want to do today is I want to cover the 3 aspects of chart interpretation and aspect interpretation and planetary interpretation. Very often when we're doing charts, we're looking for, just like in the Cosmic Key, which I sent you the book about. In the Cosmic Key, we're talking about 3 witnesses: this transit Saturn, progressed Saturn, and new moons. But in interpreting in a chart, you're also going to be looking always for 3 witnesses, 3 interpretive meanings from everything you see in those charts, because everything trickles down from the mind and the soul to the body to your health or ill health. So everything's connected. So when we're looking at aspects, if you've got a moon affliction, we're talking emotional conflicts. If you're looking at Mars afflictions, you're talking about repressed, or sometimes not less repressed, but expressed anger and hostility very often. So what I want to do is, I don't know that I've gone over this before with you, but I want to do it again, and let me know if we did do this. But I want to show you how to see relationships. For example, Venus rules sweets. Venus rules relationships. Venus rules your appetite for sweets. For example, yes. So also in terms of understanding the physical form of that, it takes shape with very often diabetes and the craving for sugar and sweets. And then if you look at what Venus rules, it rules your kidneys. And what's one of the first things that fails when a person has diabetes? Is their kidneys. So how did these ancient astrologers see these connections back thousands of years ago? How in the hell did they know and see those relationships when
I guess they're like to me, they're like a lot more pure back then too. You know what I mean?
I like that. Yeah, the word pure is good. I think so too. And the cloud and the skies weren't so congested with so much pollution and other things. So they actually could see these planets much better. So anyway, so when we talk about Saturn, we're talking about afflictions to the skeletal frame, the teeth, the bones. And you remember Saturn rules Capricorn. Capricorn rules your knees. So when you have a lot of guilt, very often you'll have problems with the knees. When you have a lot of Saturn stuff, which is the accusing spirit, and people that are very depressed very often, and people that are how would you say this, repressed in terms of keeping everything within, and feeling non-worth, that very often leads to physical problems as well. It can be physical, it can be injuries to the knee. The knees generally I see very often as a Saturn affliction. So when you're looking at these charts, I want you to understand these things and look for the 3 meanings of these planets and then interpret them when you look at them. So I'm going to take you through a little slide presentation. I think we've maybe, I'm not sure if we've done this before. Let me know. Did we ever do this? The 3 layers?
No, we haven't done that one.
Okay, good. 3 layers of aspect interpretation. Also, I want to make you aware of something. In a man's chart, Mars, Pluto, Saturn afflictions usually can be very, very difficult. They can cause aggression. they can cause actions that undo a person's life very well. And they also, I'm talking about afflicted aspects between Saturn, Pluto, and Mars. And they also, in a woman's chart, I noticed the difference. A woman tends to attract those things, those negative energies, into her life by her relationships, even though it's not in her chart. I mean, it's in her chart, but it's not something you would normally expect her to act out in a violent way or in some way that's controlling, which is Saturn, Mars, which is anger, Pluto, which can be deadly. So when you see it in a woman's chart, she's also often the victim of these nefarious behaviors that are very sometimes injurious. So, I've seen this so often in charts. One of my students, I recall, was attending our class regularly, and all of a sudden I looked at her and I said, "You're in love. What's going on? What's going on?" I can tell. I can just tell by the light in her. She's just all excited about a relationship. And she says, "Yeah, I met this guy in this club, and I'm really feeling like he's the right guy." And so I said to her, I said, "Did you ever do his chart?" And she said, "Well, no, but he's supposed to bring or give me his birth information so I can do that." And we've been talking
Give
about
that Social Security too.
Yeah, we've been talking about this aspect for women to be careful with if a man has these Pluto, Mars, Saturn aspects, because it can be dangerous. So she's sitting in the class, and all of a sudden her phone rings, and she walks outside the door to answer the phone, and it's her boyfriend of a few weeks. And she comes in and she says, "I got his birth information." So we put his chart up, and guess what he had? Saturn, Pluto, Mars. Yeah. And so,
Hey, but what's crazy? It's crazy that you bring that up because I was watching this TikTok video where this dude was saying that what women do, women want a like a civilized beast to tame, like Beauty and the Beast,
yeah,
because it's in their nature. It's like in their nature to do that.
like they're going to change them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. They want to be the savior. So what happened was we put the chart up, and this guy turned out to be almost like a stalker. And she tried to get out of the relationship, and it was very hard because he was threatening her. And she had been kind of forewarned by the chart about the dangers with this relationship. And finally, she extracted herself from the relationship, but it took a long time, and it caused her a lot of pain and a lot of emotional turmoil trying to extricate herself from that relationship. So we're going to talk about these things, and we're going to talk about show you some charts of women that have been victimized by these aspects and show you how accurate they are. So I have a student in Sweden who shared a lot of charts with me, or a lot of situations where one young girl was kidnapped at 14 years old and raped and held in a vacant house for a long time. And fortunately, she wasn't killed, but she escaped. But the point being, I'll show you that chart, and I'll show you how accurate it is. Because you got to remember, Pluto in mythology, Pluto kidnapped Persephone and took her underground. And that planet is often associated with kidnap. So we're going to go through a few of these. I want you to see them. And the three ways.
I know. I probably have that, but I'm not kidding out nobody.
Yeah. Well, we'll look at it. We right
Like these people going crazy, boy.
Well, things with Pluto are always very secretive, so it's like especially if it's afflicting Saturn and Mars. But anyway, the three ways that these planets interact and cause physical and emotional and mental problems are what we're going to discuss here. And very often they're overlooked in the meaning of their astrological interpretation, because you don't look at the complete picture of that kind of trickle down influence, the mental, the emotional, that becomes the physical.
Mm-hmm.
And so people that have, for example, aspects that are, here, I'll show you this one. Aspects with the suns, which is the spirit, the life, the ego, the needs for recognition and praise. That's what your sun's all about. Okay, the subconscious or the sun riders, the conscious mind, it's the spirit, it's the will, it's your purpose and your life force. The sun is the loving father. Sun is your heart. The sun rules your back and courage as well.
Mm-hmm.
Determination and purpose in life. Closest aspects to planets to sun describe the strongest area of the need for praise. Now, this is very important. The closest aspect you have to the sun by any planet will describe the things that you take the most joy in being praised about. For example, I have Mars and within a degree of my sun by square. And I've always been kind of proud of my martial ability, my fighting ability. And it's a lot of stuff in the ego there with all that, okay? What a tough guy, what a tough guy I am. And I think I see it in my nature. There's a tendency to be very kind of boastful and proud of my feats of battles in my life. And I take a lot of praise and, look for praise in that area, I think.
Yeah. Like over here, they said like sun to Mars, like energy, resoluteness, creative power, instinctiveness, courage, ambitions, striving for power, chances for success. You know what I mean?
That's right. Well,
So it's like you got a lot of energy, and that was your way to bring it out.
that's right. It's not a bad aspect, but it's just one that can cause, the immaturity of it is, for example, seeking praise for my martial arts or my martial ability. So that's Mars stuff, okay? But again, those aspects tell you a lot about what is important to that child if you're looking at a child's chart. One of my students has a child who is autistic, and he's very non-communicative. And I noticed in his chart when I did his son's chart, his father was Tim, and I knew Tim from back in Chicago many years ago. He found me here in Florida, and I knew his father and his brother who died in a car accident, and his father was a preacher in a church, and we were very close with him and his family. But that's another story. So, but his son, Tim's son, was autistic, and I noticed that the closest aspect to his son was Mars. And I told him, I said, you should put your son in martial arts. And he says, he's always been attracted to that stuff, but he doesn't think he can do it because he's autistic, and he has a lot of communication problems. Well, he had a really good martial arts teacher, and he went to him and he took him under his wing, and this boy blossomed. And every time he would do anything in his skill sets that he would be teaching him, he'd be with his father, dad, did you see me? Did you see this? Did you see that? And he would be so proud of his accomplishments. And it opened him up to communicate in a way he never could before. And it changed his life, quite frankly. And I think that's one of the values of astrology. It can give you a lot of direction. It can give you a lot of insights into your children,
Yep.
what they need and what they're striving for, and also where they need the most praise. So these are very important things. Okay, so when we're looking at a chart, you can easily look at that chart and you can see what aspects, what planets are aspecting that sun the closest. For example, if you have Saturn sun aspects, now that can be any aspect. It can be trine, it can be square, it can be opposition, doesn't matter. But it's just that it's there, it's trying to talk to you, it's trying to tell you something about the need for praise in that child. So let's say it's Saturn making that aspect to the sun. Then that child needs praise for his punctuality, his discipline, his hard work, the ability to persevere and follow through on his goals. And these children need strong goal orientation. And you can look in your children's charts and you can see these things. You can see where they would strive and do the best, okay? Sometimes, especially with the sun, there's a great need to be on stage. And if you would, acting maybe, or maybe performing on some level, be a musician or anything else where they're doing something that allows them to get that accolade and that praise. So these are things that are very detectable in a child's chart. Okay, so a lot of times you gravitate to those things anyway. A child will gravitate to those particular, for example, I've always gravitated to martial arts. I've always enjoyed them and always loved them. And, you know, that was long before I was into astrology. And I didn't realize that I was following my chart and what my instincts were, basically being influenced by that and energies of that Mars sun in my chart. So anyway, so the closest aspect of the planet to the sun is the strongest area of the need for praise. Remember, the sun is praise. Okay, it represents, it's Leo, the sun. It's the joyful life. We celebrate our birthdays on our birthday and with a party and celebration, recognition of that birth of that child. So child's 12 years old and all of a sudden he's got a big birthday party. He's the center of attention. And that's what that child is craving. He's getting something that is being produced by that activity. And we do it instinctively. We do it as a family. We have a big celebration, cake, blow out the candles and all that stuff. So this is what the sun's about. Okay. So let's look at okay, the moon. The moon is your soul. It's your feelings, your touch, your subconscious mind. Feeling, touch, and nurturing. That's what the moon's all about. The moon are your habit patterns. It's also your addictions. Addictions are habits. Unfortunately, they're not good ones usually, whether it's smoking or drugs or whatever it is. So the habits that are formed in your body. The moon is the comfort zone of the nurturing child that wants to suckle at the mother's breast. We're still doing that when we get older. We don't know we're doing it, so we open up some milk and cookies and we sit at the refrigerator for, you know, to stuff ourselves with food. And then we wonder why we're overweight, because we're looking for that nurturing, that comfort that food provides us. You look at these shows where you see these 1,000-pound women, you know, and you say, my God, how do they get that fit? And they say it's their comfort. It's the only thing that comforts them. So often when people are having emotional problems, they seek out food as that way to comfort themselves. And some
as above,
you got it.
so below. You know, it's like your mouth is the opposite of your, you know, your sexual parts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Very often these
Like if you look at it, if you look at it like that.
Well, all of your habits are nurturing habits, whether they be self-nurturing, where you're seeking out comfort in food and solace in that way, or whether it's sex. It can be sexual addiction, all those things can be addictive. Okay, so whether they're good or bad, who's to say? I mean, they it's not about a judgment thing. It's just not recognizing that these can be addictions. Okay, so the moon is your habits, your food addictions, it's unconscious behavior, emotional needs, the child within us. It's the mother, it's the home, it's security, domesticity, the stomach, the breast. So let's carry this down. If there's moon afflictions, that means there's great discontent in the soul or the subconscious mind, okay? So how do you think those could manifest? They can manifest by undoing behavior. I used to do a lot of experimenting with hypnosis. And I found that, you could get somebody to do something that they absolutely would not normally do if you gave them a suggestion. And they would always find a rational reason for their behavior, even though it was totally irrational. For example, I remember when I was in the Navy, I hypnotized the guy, and we were all having a good time. It was a jolly good bunch of us guys together, and I had him barking like a dog and doing stupid things. And I also had him typing on a typewriter and taught him how to type within minutes, and he was actually doing it.
Yeah, but how's that work? That means they're like their willpower isn't that strong. You can easily just break through it.
If it's not so, yeah, if the willpower is the conscious willful mind, and sometimes people can, can stop it if they want to. But if they're open and suggestive enough, they can be put into a trance, and that trance can be it can be brought on by many techniques. So Siri, stop talking to me.
I found this on the web. The weather opening suggestive enough they can be put into a chance.
They listening, boy.
Yeah, Siri.
Recorded that down. They got some metadata on that one.
She got it. So anyway, one of the suggestions I gave him was that when my friend Frank over here, we were all having a good time, when he scratched his nose, he would tear the jumper pocket off of his jumper. And the jumper pocket was ripped about a ½ inch down. It was an old jumper, so I didn't mind ripping it and having him rip it. But it was a post-hypnotic suggestion, and one that was not rational. So we stood around and we talked and we laughed and we showed him what he typed. He didn't believe it, that he typed that. And we had a little bit of fun with him, and all of a sudden, Frank reaches up and scratches his nose. And Mike goes like a guy that needs a cigarette, looks at his pocket, keeps looking at it like he's bugged by it. And he doesn't quite know what's going on, but all of a sudden he just rips it off the jumper pocket, rips it off. Mm-hmm. And you ask him why, and he said, "Oh, I got tired of looking at the damn thing. It was ripped." And he gave me a quick rational explanation. And so very often the suggestions that we're getting in the subconscious mind are motivating us to do things that are not naturally rational. But yet, if we have to explain why we behave that way, we're going to come up with a rational reason. That's just the way it is, because we can't, the conscious mind can't accept that there wasn't a good reason to do such a thing. And sometimes the things we do irrationally on unconscious motivations can be very bad, or they can be very good. But the point I'm getting at is that once the suggestion is rooted in the subconscious, that's why the danger for kids and children these days is so paramount, because they're watching so many videos and news and things on TV and games that are destructive, killing people and all these things. So all that's getting put in their subconscious mind. And it can breed a lot of problems in society, which you're seeing with these mass shootings in these schools and things like that. You know, these kids have been brought up with all this killing, and they become kind of just
Like desensitized.
that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. They really do. So they train military men to kill that way, you know, using these kind of video games. So what I'm talking to you about here is the three aspects of understanding these energies. So when we're talking about moon afflictions, we're talking about deep-seated conflicts that are very often rooted in early family life, particularly children in their childhood. Things that have happened in their childhood that are impacting them to this day, but they don't recognize those things. They don't see it. And a lot of those are suggestions that a mother or a father is placing in that child's mind is constantly bearing its fruits throughout their lifetime. You know, my parents would say, don't go outside without a coat, you'll catch the death of pneumonia. Don't go outside without a coat or you catch the death of pneumonia. My God, that's a terrible thing to tell somebody. You don't catch pneumonia from being outside in the cold air. You catch it from being inside in a trapped in air that is highly polluted and not circulated. But, you know, we tell our kids things like that, you know. I can remember my dad one time he was concerned because I was masturbating. You know, I got caught masturbating. Terrible thing, right? And he said, son, if you keep doing that, you're gonna go blind. You're gonna go blind. Well, what a lie. What a lie. You know? But you know, that's what he was told when he was young. You know.
It's like what's crazy is like we don't know that. Like if I never opened my mind up and I just kept going where I was going, it's like you don't know that like you have that much effect on somebody. Because you know the way I grew up or anybody grows up, it's like, man, I did that, so they should be able to do it too.
That's right. Yeah, you know, we really are subject to a lot of parental influences. And I know my mother kept saying to me when I was young, someday you're going to end up in prison, Ron. Someday you're going to end up in prison. Well, she was the prophet. And maybe that also helped make that come true. You know, if somebody keeps telling you that over and over again up here. And I remember a doctor one time I was, you know, he said, oh, well, you know, you get old, you're going to have a lot of problems. And I thought, what a thing to say to somebody. At that time in my life, though, he was a very powerful, how would you call him, influencing figure in my life when he told me that. So I believed all that, you know. So, you know, doctors and people in counseling roles have a strong responsibility to be aware of what they're saying and what seeds they're planting in those people around them, because they're respected and regarded with some awe and admiration. And the more that's the case, the more you buy into what they're saying. Unfortunately, they're not the best psychologists for sure. So when you look at these moon afflictions, for example, they generally manifest themselves in the stomach. Okay, the moon rules your stomach. The moon rules a woman's breast. Okay, it rules our breast as well, but it rules our breast. And sometimes you get people or women with strong afflictions to their moon, and they'll have some injury or some potential disease that can come from that aspect. And what causes it is the repression. For example, if they have a Mars aspect to their moon, it's afflicting. That Mars aspect can mar or injure. And sometimes, I mean, I remember doing a client one day, I think I've shared this with you, a little humorous, but I was telling her that she had a real strong Mars aspect to her moon, and I felt this is something I don't usually get, but this is the message I got. I said, in a past life, you were stabbed by some man in your breast. And I said, you should have a mole or a scar on your breast from that wound in your past life. And she said, my God, Ron, I do. It looks just like a knife wound. I got a mole that looks just like that. I said, can I see it? No, she wouldn't let me see it. I was teasing you. But the point being, little humor. But what I'm saying is that was a real.
Hey, you got a picture?
And that woman said, I have a fear all my life of knives. In fact, she said, if there's a knife laying on the counter in my kitchen, I absolutely have to put it away because it bothers me so much. So that past life influence.
Man, they say that like if you're not ready to go, or if like you die, if you're in the past life and you die and then you're not ready to go, and the freaking moon grabs your soul, boom, and then throws you back until you finish your business.
Well, I've experienced that opportunity to leave in my own life, and I chose I didn't want to leave, and I didn't. But I had.
That's crazy. We're gonna do my podcast. I'm gonna ask you about that because that's crazy. I was gonna say that my son, until he was about 3, he wouldn't let us bathe him. He would scream because he was so terrified of water. And our oldest daughter is terrified of fire.
Wow.
So she would freak out if we had a candle on for the longest time. She'd be like, "Oh my gosh, turn off the candles, it's gonna start a fire." And we're like, "Where did she?" And then we'd put him in the water, even as a baby, even at 2, and he would full on scream his head off and be terrified.
Is that right? Wow. Yeah, it would be interesting to see his chart in that respect.
And he's a Scorpio. He's a raging Scorpio. We love him. He's passionate.
Yeah.
And every time it comes by me, he hits me like a scorpion sting.
Yeah.
He always hitting me, man.
Be interesting to look at that chart, wouldn't it? In light of these.
Yeah, I'm gonna share their birth times with you today, in a text later. But Jeremiah always says that from what he's read, he should definitely be in martial arts because he has a lot of frustration, anger, and he needs to put it out through an outlet.
Yeah, because Scorpios are they need to be half physical and half emotional, and they need to be even.
Yeah. It's so helpful. The astrology is so helpful in that respect. I've told you many times the Saturn Mars afflictions need to be physical. They need a physical activity. If they don't have it, they get angry, which is Mars, and they get depressed, which is Saturn. So the way to offset that energy, that depression and that anger, is to be physically active. And working out in a gym, for example, whatever, yoga, as my wife does. And so if she doesn't constantly actively participate on some level, very physical. I mean, she'll work out more just doing cleaning the house than any woman I've ever seen, or cleaning the yard, she's always active. And she's spilling out that energy that would otherwise potentially be depression and anger. By her activities, she's diffusing it, if you would. Mm-hmm. So, and you got to remember that when we're talking about the moon afflictions, we're talking about, particularly with women, we're often seeing a lot of repression, and all that internalizes into problems in the physical level, which can be the stomach. Mm-hmm. You get a Mars aspect to the moon, you get an over-acidic stomach. You get cardinal signs in these signs, the moon, for example. Cardinal signs can cause physical problems, illnesses that are long duration. Saturn afflictions to the moon can cause chronic. Remember the word chronos is the ancient name for Saturn. Can cause chronic problems in the health arena. So when we say chronic, we're talking about of long duration. Okay, so again, that's Saturn's word, chronic. So Mars is more heated and feverish and fiery energies and fiery damage sometimes, okay? Like high fevers, for example. And so all these things are aspects that we can interpret in a chart. And so, we're looking for in a moon's chart, the moon in a woman or a man's chart even is looking for security, domesticity. It's looking for the mother to nurture that child, if you would, that adult, but it's a child inside looking to be comforted. So, and so he may or she may seek out all those things from food, might be sex, but its emotional needs are strong. And these can bring problems, or they can bring solace. It doesn't necessarily always mean it's bad. But when I say bad, I don't think of bad so much. I think it's just the way life is. Venus in our is our need for love, affections, union, harmony, and peace. We talked about this earlier. Venus is sweets, ability to receive or give affection, artistic expression, and relationships. It can be business or personal in general. It can be anything. It can be a business relationship. It can be a relationship of a marriage or a boyfriend, girlfriend type thing. Love affairs are very often under the guise of the sun. Romantic influences are the sun. If you look at the Leo, the fifth house, it rules the kind of the part of our life where we're in love all the time. As children, not as teenagers. We fall in and out of love all the time, and that kind of is what Leo and the fifth house and these energies are. So when we talk about relationships, there's a relationship that's Libra-like, which is marriage, contractual. You're my wife, I own you. So I hear these songs, even the songs that people singing, I want you for the rest of my life. It's like you're an object. I want to own you, gonna love you forever, and all that. So these songs
put that rat stamp on them.
Yeah, you got it exactly. So anyway, so when we look at these aspects, I was saying to you, how do they filter down? The Venus, like I have a grand cross on Venus, and my moon, Neptune, and Jupiter form a grand cross. I'm fortunate because Jupiter's on my cross. Do you remember I told you that? Jupiter's Jesus, Jesus. So when Jupiter's on a cross, you're blessed in a way. You'll tend to turn negative things into good things. You'll tend to resurrect from your crosses. Whether it's my 9 years in prison, good things came out of that, really. Even though it was torturous crucifixion for 9 years. But what came out of that? My gifts and talents were nurtured by those years of solitude in prison. So Jupiter on a cross is a blessing. If you see a chart and you see a grand cross, you may think, oh, this is going to be terrible. This person's got a lot of pain in life and all that. But you got to recognize they'll come out of it smelling like sweet stuff. And no matter what it comes their way, they'll tend to overcome it, and they'll tend to rise above it. So, and you also keep in mind when we talk about planets, we're also talking about the signs. If all the planets in a cross are immutable signs, which is what? Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, and Sagittarius, those are called mutable signs. That means that when there's a crucifying situation or a crisis, which is what the cross represents, a crisis, that means that those people tend to want to run away, to escape from that reality, if you would. So I have that grand cross.
Damn, instead, but that's crazy. Instead of running away, they can adapt. It's like the positive, instead of running away and fighting, you can adapt, and then you can have flexibility, have some more tools down the line.
Well, the thing with running away is that it's like, it's escape from this. I don't need this in my life, okay? So if the marriage isn't working out, I'm leaving. I don't need this. Okay. So where the cardinal signs are a little more steady and a little more stabilized, fixed signs are stubborn. They tend to hang in there. So the fixed signs, if you have a fixed cross, their problem very often is they don't leave something when they should. They don't know when it's over. And the fixed cross can cause that.
Yeah.
So, and the cardinal crosses tend to manifest a lot of problems physically because the crosses are much more physical. The Cancer, the Aries, the Capricorn, and
Libra.
yeah, um, um, and so when we're talking about the cardinal crosses, they tend to produce physical problems more than they do anything else. The emotional problems are more, the mental emotional problems are also emotional is very much when you got Cancer involved, the cardinal sign, that's emotional as well. But the mental signs, the Gemini, the Sagittarian, the Virgo, and the Pisces, those signs, they tend for mental problems more than they do physical. A lot of instability on a mental level. So, and a lot of the problems that I've had in my life have been that, with that grand cross and mutable signs. So I also have a grand trine in my chart. So what's that do? It helps offset a lot of the negative stuff. The grand trine is when three planets are in roughly 120 degrees apart from each other. And so
Make an agreement.
yeah, it makes a nice.
They're like communicating and making an agreement with each other. That's cool. I learned that today.
You got it. You got it.
Thanks to me. We
Well,
were doing some
Hey,
studying today.
you had what?
We were doing some studying today. I was getting him to study how I wanted him to study.
And did that go over all right?
Yeah, he's remembering. You see?
That's great. That's great.
I'll put me on blast. But what's cool about that is now, like I see what you're saying. When it talks to you, you just see it like in your mind, like you ever seen that Not So Raven show? Like you see like a flash or something, and you can figure out the story. Right. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of Uranus stuff. That flash of insight and knowledge, intuition, if you would, I tell people there's two forms of tuition. You can go to school and spend your money for it. And there's another thing called intuition.
Common sense.
You got it. You got it. So a lot of people have a lot of that and and a lot of people don't have a lot of common sense. So it's like,
But it's crazy the way that, like you said, and when you went to prison, you learned something. Like with me, it felt like when I started working in the chemical plants, I didn't have that much common sense because I never dealt with like real men or whatever. So, but dealing with those guys, they taught me like how to look at the whole picture and like a whole picture of a project. You know what I mean? That was
yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah, that's a gift. Some people have it, some don't, but that's for sure. Yes. So Mars drives anger, fear, courage. Mars is aggression, anger, conscious, willful, passionate, and strong drives. It can be surgery, scars, and violence. It can be all those things. It can be fevers. Okay, Mars can bring all that. We use the word Mars or mark. You got a mark on you. That's from Mars. Okay, think about the word itself. Okay, so there's I was doing a chart of Lena's cousin, I believe, in Sweden, excuse me, in Holland. And I did the son's chart. How old was he? Was about what? 5 years old, about the same age as our son at the time. We were visiting Holland, and we were sitting at a table, and they're both professors, very strong, rational people. And I did their chart, and I said, your son should have had a major scar on his back, and because I saw it so clearly, and
Well, Kuta Kinte.
well, they were freaked out because they had it removed, It was so bad, they had to have it surgically removed. But the point being that showed up in that chart, and they just couldn't comprehend how you could ever see that in a chart. And it sets them back. And I used to do Sweet 16 parties, and I would give readings for all these kids. They were 16, celebrating a party, it was a very wealthy family, and the father was a physicist, very rational. And I would see their parents were divorced, and I would see that their brothers were causing a lot of trouble for their lives. And I would see all this in their charts. And of course, they'd come out and they were flabbergasted, and they would tell the professor, he was not a professor, he was a very high up in the physics world, I believe it was. But he sat me down. He said, how do you explain this? You can't tell me astrology gives you all this information. I said, it does. It absolutely tells me. It speaks to me. And it's telling me that these kids are going through some great turmoil because their parents are divorced. Or I can see that the brother's been in the hospital and he's suffering a lot through that. I can see those things.
It's crazy. It's crazy that because I'm studying like biogenetics and I'm looking into like the atmosphere, like the outside of the freaking like the planet, the magnetisms, and it has it deals with like us. Like right now, like we're having like a lot of solar flares. So right now, all those planets, like even Mars, like it has like all that bad stuff. So it's gonna be like put on a people like 100 times more. The frequencies are like the sun's frequencies, like going up to like 60 hertz instead of being around like lower, like 14 or 7. It's crazy.
You're right. There's been some big solar flares. We got hit, I think it was last Friday, with a huge solar flare. I mean,
Yeah, you
big.
can feel it.
Yeah. And I think we feel them. I think we recognize them on some level.
What I studied, what happens is it's like the sun sets off these solar flare and then it hits us, and then somehow it hits us, and then it hits the moon, and the moon throws off like more ion rays. And that's why like in certain areas of the world they're red water, and it's doing that. And then but I started noticing when I started getting into that, I started noticing like when we have solar flares, I wake up around 3 o'clock in the morning or something, like man, I can't go to sleep. I have to like stretch out or something. I have to do some yoga or stretch. But I started noticing, then I started putting everything together. It's like the planets, like somehow the planets hit the sun, or the sun hits the planets, and it bounces off the sun, and then it hits, and then it hits like a Schumann resonance, and it like multiplies the energy. And they said the what's crazy is like when they talk about like and how can I say it? Like last time when they have like like Roman, like I guess last time in the Roman days when it fell, there was like Jupiter, Mars, some other or Saturn lined up with the moon. Every time when that lines up, like different empires fall. So that throws off a different frequency. So that means that for empires to grow, it has to throw a higher frequency. So since people are at a lower frequency, those planets throw us at a higher frequency. So we have no choice but to evolve.
I like that. And you're right. These solar flares and these solar particles are also help increase rain. So you've seen all of these torrential rains in California, which is normally desert-like almost, and they're getting flooded like hell. They've got more snow than they've ever seen. And that can be precipitated by solar flares. So I didn't.
And freaking earthquakes too.
Oh yeah, exactly. Good for you. Yeah, they're all connected.
Hey man, I've been like my mind with that stuff. It's like it's so crazy. It makes it seem like we're just like puppets, and we're just being controlled by the strings of God, and then and it gives us a choice. Like you know what I mean? It's like we're like a web, like a big old web that's connected. Nobody realized that because back in the day with the Christians, they thought just normal people, we just had souls, and they just wanted to get rid of it. Like you said it in your book. Like they want to get rid of the spirit. So now they're coming back. Now they're figuring out everybody has a spirit in them. So, you know, it's wild.
That's true. I think that
But
one of the things that you're referring to is, I believe the sun is a living life force. And I believe it gets angry sometimes in the world here. I really believe that. I believe it gets angry.
yeah, because if it gives us energy, we have to give it back energy like some type of way. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you know, like we breathe, we give the trees energy, and when they breathe, they give us energy. So it has to be like a recycle. So what you're saying, it's possible, because I know the sun gives out, like, for us to be functioning is like 0.5 hertz, or like everything's like basically all electrical. It's wild. I love it.
Yep, that's I know even the ionosphere, you know, it's got a cycle. And I know my father was a scientist. He worked on that ionospheric stuff. And the ionosphere has got I think it's 8 cycles per second or something, very fast. And I notice when I'm in airplanes, if I'm flying, that my psychic ability seems to be much sharp, very sharp. I'll be sitting with somebody in a plane, and it's like I know all about them. And you know, it's happened to me so many times, it's scary almost. And I mean, I'm sitting with
Yeah,
one.
and they say that they
Because
said the higher you go, the more the time slows down.
I think that we're more in sync with that at that time. I was sitting with a guy, and I was reading. He asked me what I did, and I said I'm an astrologer. He says, "You don't believe in that stuff, do you?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And he was reading a book, and it was the 7 Habits of Successful People or something. Very popular book. I said, "You should. That's a great book." I said, "You should be reading that." He said, "What do you mean I should be reading it?" I said, "Because you need it." So what do you mean I need it? I said, "Because you just got out of prison and you got a lot of problems with alcohol, and you've lost your relationship with your daughter and your wife, and you're divorced." He freaked out.
Hey, man, that's the thing that I was talking about. Like, since you could do that, you know how like back in the day they had these Bible quotes and they could predict the future. So these people know how to use their astrology to get point every event that's happening in the world.
Well, I'm not there, but
But I want to know how they do that. They just, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're so good they could just visualize that, because back in the day they didn't have no TVs and stuff like that. So maybe they're so pure they could freaking feel it.
look at Nostradamus, how many things he predicted with astrology, you know? So, you know, there's many forms of astrology. There's medical astrology, people that use it just basically for that. There's political astrology. There's all kinds. There's financial astrology. There's all sorts of astrology, you know.
Cardology. That's pretty neat too.
What'd you say, Lynn? Medical, I mentioned.
Cardology.
Yeah, yeah. So once you get into this field, you know, you can branch off into so many other areas. There's books written on astrology and nutrition, very powerful books that teach you a lot about biochemistry and nutrition, and the planets and understanding them. If you got afflictions with Venus, you should be taking more copper, for example. You know,
For the socks.
you got afflictions with
I know, because what's crazy, like when we die, sorry for interrupting, when we die, it's like they said we have 12 different grains of salts. So that represents when we're like born, we only have, like, I don't know, it takes like 9 months to come out of mother's womb. So we only have those 9 months of those salts. So we're just missing out of those 3 other salts to make us a pure whole.
Yeah, there's books written on that subject of the salts, the 12 salts and all. And those are tied in with the 12 signs as well. So let's keep on here. Let me just give you some of these things. So when you're looking at these charts and you see these afflictions, you know, and you can begin to see. I remember seeing a chart, my ex-wife's boyfriend for years. I did his chart, and he had Mars afflicting the moon in the 4th house of childbirth. And And I said to him, I said, you know, you were scarred or something happened to you at childbirth. And he was shocked. He said, you know, he said, they did a cesarean on my mother, and the doctor cut my face with a scalpel, and they had to suture it up. He said, I still have a scar today. I didn't know that. It wasn't obvious to me. But that happened at birth, you know, but that showed up in this chart, you know, and how it shows up is amazing to me, you know, why it speaks that particular message to me. But so we're going to talk about, I want to get on with this a little bit. I want to show you some charts of people that have had these things. Jupiter, optimism, faith, future, present oriented. Jupiter's Jesus. Jupiter's in the current, present all the time. When you're in that space of time where you are in the eternal now, to be in the eternal presence of God means you need to be totally in the present. You can't be in the present if you're thinking about, oh, I got to go get a loaf of bread soon. I better check the kids tonight, make sure they're in bed and doing well. You're not here. You're not really here. You're somewhere else, constantly flitting back and forth. The good student is able to focus. Okay, a poor student can't focus. You know why? Because they're always distracted. They're always going somewhere else. They're daydreaming, and they're not in the place they're supposed to be. So they don't learn. They can't learn because they're not in the now. So Jupiter's opportunity, it's blessings, fortune, magnanimity. That's the beautiful word. People that have strong Jupiters are very magnanimous. They like to give. They like to be, they're usually bountiful in their giving. They also have good wisdom, charity, benevolence. Okay, Jesus, he said it very perfectly. Jesus said, I am, and I am, and I am. He didn't say, no, I was. I am, and I will be, did he? He said, no, he said, I am, and I am, and I am. When they confronted him, Jesus, about how can he speak of Moses and the prophets when he's not yet 30 years old? And Christ replied to them, and he said, I am, and I am, and I am. Amazing words. He didn't say, I am, I will be, and I was. He said, I am, and I am, and I am. He's the eternal now.
Saying right now, I am right now.
You got it. I am the Holy of Holies. If you go back to Moses, when God spoke to him in the burning bush, and Moses said, who am I going to say sent me? And you know what God said to him? He says, you tell him, I am that I am sent you. I am that I am. You are that you think you are. Okay? If you keep on affirming over and over again, you're going to be that person. Okay? I get weak and I say things that I know are wrong. My wife tries to straighten me out on it. I'll say something like, I'm getting older, or I'm not healthy, or I've got this problem or that. Boy, she'll bring me right up on it.
Yeah, man. So, find another 100 more years, dude.
Yeah, well, you know, we got to stay on the path. Say, I am, and I am, and I am. Eternal now. Okay. Saturn, pessimism, caution, fear, duty, responsibility. It's unforgiving, living in the past. It's the father. Now, my son, for example, Andre, by this marriage, Andre has an affliction from his sun to Saturn. And sun, he's a Leo, and this Leo is the sun, and Leo's the lion. And my son Andre, our son Andre, is very strong-willed. He won competitions in 5 states in strength in competition. He's a classical pianist, won first place in many places. He's played in Merkel Hall in New York. He's a gifted pianist. He's a brilliant scientist. Anything he's ever...
That's cool, man. Y'all guided him.
Yeah, anything he set his mind to, he's done. But when I was trying to be the father, the Saturn father, which is the one that disciplined him, I mean, I met my match. Even as a child, I couldn't control him. he was so stubborn and so strong, even as a child. I couldn't turn him over to pat his bottom. I couldn't, you know. He was just beyond control when it came to that.
Guy using jujitsu moves.
So, but see, Saturn is father, but it's a stern father. The sun is a spiritual father. So you are both to your children. Sometimes you're Saturn, you're the father of discipline, limitations, restrictions. You begin by 12, whatever, you know, if you're going on a date, don't you do this, don't you do that. That's all Saturn talking. But the sun is spiritual. That sun is also me. So that energy is a whole different spirit than the one of Saturn. So if you're trying to play the role of a disciplinarian, like you with your daughter, for example, when you're trying to deal with her stubbornness, the more you fight her, the worse she'll get. She's probably got a strong will, very strong will.
She is strong too.
You do too. So,
Man, she's strong. I'm saying she's strong too.
You're breaking up on me.
Now I'm saying my daughter, she's strong too. Wrestling with him or whatever. You hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Like when I try to wrestle with him or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, physically strong. Well, you know, these qualities are get you through life, things that we think are negative or the good things. Saturn is father time, the measure off of all things. Saturn gives impatience, punctuality, and guilt and accusations. Okay, you've heard of the Italian and the Jewish mother always trying to direct their children with guilt. You're going to be the death of me. You know what I mean? You know, all this kind of stuff. That's Saturn talking right there, the accusing spirit. So a lot of manipulation goes on with that, okay, with Saturn. Saturn's going to manipulate you. Saturn is the subtlest of all the beasts. Saturn is subtlety. Saturn will, you know, tell you how much he loves you, or she'll say how much you love the mother, but she'll kind of smother you with her love, you know, and that's not necessarily the healthiest thing. So when we're talking about these energies, Saturn manifests itself in physical problems with the skeletal frame, the teeth, the bones, depression, melancholy, moodiness, all that Saturn energies. So when you're under that, you want to break that spell. It's not easy to break always. But sometimes the best solution is solitude, okay, to get away. One of the problems with relationships is that people don't know how to tolerate separation. And what happens is they end up having a big fight because they don't understand the need for someone to be silent. So rather than and seeing it as a rejection, they see it as something very negative. And what happens is they get in a fight. And so everybody now can storm off to their own corners and not talk to each other for a while, maybe a day or two. Well, you could have achieved the same thing by just saying, I really need some solitude and peace, and I need to be alone for a while to heal. But that isn't always easy to do in a relationship. Okay? Because there's a lot of demands on relationships. So one of the ways to deal with that, okay? Moon to Mars affliction, feeling hurt easy, emotional insecurity when faced with danger or threats. Okay, stomach ulcers, surgery of the stomach or female parts, breast surgery, can be childish when intimidated or aroused emotionally. Need for food or sex to relieve anxiety and tension. Suppresses anger, but when released, it's in strong emotional outburst. This is the moon. Yeah, that's a moon to Mars aspect. Now, let me tell you also, like, for example, I have my Mars in Pisces. And all my life, I've been a good runner. I used to run track, and I've got good feet. But when I got older, I injured myself by trying to lift and carry something up a long staircase in our ex-home where I lived. I was trying to get these beautiful oak cabinets that I have right here. and I had one other guy helping me. He was at the top and I was in the bottom. And I was using every bit of strength I had to lift those upstairs. And each step I took was like pain. And I ripped out my foot when I did it. And I had to have surgery on my foot. But who would have predicted that? I mean, Mars in Pisces, of course, Mars is what? Surgery? Pisces rules your feet. But I would have never thought that I was going to ever have problems with my feet. But because
That's crazy. You didn't have Saturn with that?
You're breaking up again.
No, I'm saying you didn't have a Saturn with that because I would have thought like like Father Time. Since you're running a lot, now it's like time to catch up. You know what I mean?
No, it was the fact that I was trying to be, I should have never taken, my wife, I remember telling me, don't do this. It's just too heavy. But I'm being a macho guy, I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to make it work. And this other guy that's helping me, he's on the top, I'm on the bottom. And those steps, every step was like torture. And I ripped out my Achilles tendon. And not the foot, I ripped the part of the foot. Anyway, I had to have surgery for that. So the point being that, it took me all these years into my 40s for me to injure my foot, but I finally did accomplish my Mars and Pisces aspect, squaring my sun. So what I'm saying is that a lot of these things don't happen when you're young. A lot of the physical aspects of injuries and sickness and things like that come more when you're older, when you're more vulnerable. When you're young, you can kind of always make it through. You heal quicker, your body's more resilient, it can handle more. So,
Preach, brother, preach.
huh?
Preach, brother, preach.
Praise the brother, preach. Yeah, you know what?
I said, preach, brother, because when we're younger, now I'm kind of, when I was younger, I just treated my body like whatever, and now I'm like kind of feeling it.
Yeah, it takes sometimes we wear it out. But we have many things here when we're talking about Moon to Mars afflictions. People's hurt easy. Mars to Moon, they're emotionally, they get very hurt easy. They're very sensitive usually, okay, these people. So if you see that aspect in a chart or your children's chart, you have to be much more sensitive to that because their feelings, they also repress their feelings. They don't let you know, they'll quiet down. They'll withdraw with the moon, that kind of energy, they'll withdraw. If they get feeling hurt, and they'll push it all down, if you would, and don't express anything outside. Then when they do express it, though, it boils over into a burst of anger that's very emotional. So let's keep going here. Moon to Saturn afflictions, deep emotional depression, melancholy and moody, holds on to childhood hurts and thinking of the past, often constant accusing of the mother. Why is that? Because Saturn is the accusing spirit and the moon is what? The mother. So very often there's deep-seated anger towards the mother when you see these aspects. And I've seen it where the mother can't seem to do anything about it. She knows it's going on. She recognizes it, if the child almost hates her, but there's nothing she can do about it because that's inbred in that child, in that aspect. So,
Wow.
Go ahead. Oh, Jesus.
I was saying that. What happened?
Okay, I'm sorry about that noise. Okay. So what was you saying? I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
No, I forgot what I was saying.
Okay. So anyway,
I do that sometimes.
The moon afflicting Saturn can give what? Problems with parents in life and a generally unhappy childhood. If other aspects support this, Saturn in the 4th house can also make for an unhappy childhood. I have Saturn in my 4th. I was born with it, and I had a terrible childhood. A lot of homes, I was, in different homes. I was in boarding homes. I was abused by a lot of people, and it's a horror story, really, in my childhood. So these are just we got to look at a whole chart. I'm giving you this as specific possibilities, and you should start to look at a chart and see these things in your own way, and then look for more. How would I say it? Look for more support that says that. Don't just look for one thing. I like to find three things that kind of speak to me, and if I get three, I know I'm on target. If I've got one or two, I might not be. But if I generally, though, these kind of aspects, for example, Moon to Saturn, Moon to Mars, these are very, very easy to read. And so Mars, Saturn, Pluto is the worst affliction in a chart you can ever have. Now, I don't have to
That's
say
that yod.
Yeah, well, let's say can be a yod, by the way. And I see that often in a chart. A yod is that 150-degree aspect, but it can be a square opposition or a 45-degree aspect. These are all afflictions. So the following are 4 charts I did for clients this past month with these injurious aspects in them and their stories behind them. Now I'm going to show you these charts. This was my client in Sweden that I had for many, many months.
Check it out.
See if I can get there. Okay. This is my client's daughter. She had a boyfriend who was a Muslim. He was a drug addict and a father to her newborn child. And she's, if you look at this chart, I mean, it's really, first of all, she's got the moon.
But her personality is like a Jupiter personality too.
You got it. Good for you. It's Jupiter in the first house, okay? So I want you to look
There
at
it
the
is.
aspects. Tell me what aspects you see are afflicted in this chart. It's so powerful. Can you do
They're
that?
like her son, her son, and then Chiron. So Chiron means with her son, it means like a abandonment.
You know,
That's
I
a
don't.
wounded healer.
Yeah, I'm glad you're doing Chiron. I don't actually,
And then go ahead.
So
but
I see Saturn afflicting with her son, her, and her, yeah, mostly her son.
and what else? How about the moon?
Oh, with
Yeah,
Mars.
and squares her moon.
The T cross. See the cross over here,
Oh,
and then this.
and then on the Mars too.
You got it. So you've got the sun, Mercury, and opposing Saturn, all that squaring the moon and Pluto, by the way. Pluto's 20 degrees. So it's definitely an orb.
And so she's getting hurt physically and emotionally.
You got it. So her spirit and her soul is being crucified by Saturn. And that is
Dang, what?
this guy was bad news. Very bad news for her. And he threatened her life, threatened her mother's life. This isn't his chart, but it's hers. Do you remember I told you this is very important for you to keep in mind? When you see charts like this in a woman's chart, she usually attracts these things. She's not the perpetuator all the time. She's the victim. That's so important for you to know. Doesn't mean that she couldn't become a perpetuator of these things, but it's not likely because it's not in the woman's spirit generally to do that. But she attracts those things into her life. And she stubbornly, these are all fixed signs. You notice that? You're talking Leo, Aquarius,
Oh yeah.
Scorpio.
Yeah.
And she stubbornly kept going back to this asshole. Excuse my language. She stubbornly kept
Hey,
back.
speaking facts.
And she'd go back and back and back until the mother couldn't handle it anymore. Until he threatened her life, the mother's life. So, and this was a man, I mean, he's supposedly a good, excuse me. What's going on? So he's, this is a chart of somebody that is really, he was very, I would say, sick, actually. And if you look at that, I mean, this is not his chart, it's her chart, but she is actually, the reason it got so bad for her is because she had a child by this guy. And that sucked her into this relationship even worse. And so she's trying to say, I want him to be the father, and I want him to recognize the child, and the child to recognize the father. But how do I do that if I've got such a person in my life? And so she kept trying to get back into this relationship. That's what Saturn does, by the way. Saturn drags you back and back into the past. And she kept going for it. And she got Pluto with the moon in Scorpio. Pluto rules childbirth as well. So it shows you the moon, the mother, and Pluto, the birth of a child, all happening in Scorpio, which is the sign of Pluto. All this is happening on this cross, which is part of the cross of the crucifixion that she went through, having a child by this guy. Her mother sent her to another country, literally, to get him away from her. That's how extreme it was. To family members in another country.
But that's wild. It's like, man, you showed her the chart. Hey, man, like you're falling for the trap every time, and it says it's right here. Then all you gotta do is just move out the way, and you should be good.
Yeah, the trouble with it is I'm doing the chart for the mother, and the mother sees what I see, but the daughter doesn't know and won't be receptive to this subject right now because she's sucked into this guy's life. So this is just one chart. I mean, a lot of these, I was teaching this woman in Sweden. And so a lot of these charts came out of that. Okay. This is the 14-year-old girl that was kidnapped and raped. And I'll let you figure this chart out. I want you guys do it for me, please. I'm going to make it bigger for you if I can.
It's kind of like a sextile or like yeah.
A sextile? What is a sextile aspect? How many degrees?
Whoa. Hey.
How many?
60 degrees.
60. Good for you. Good for you.
Hold on, man.
At least they got it.
Yeah, 60. Hey, 60.
Okay. So 90 is the square. 60 is a sextile is 30 degrees. I mean, excuse me, it's 60 degrees. A semi-sextile is 30 degrees. These are all good aspects. The squares, the oppositions. And so I want you to look at this chart. Tell me what you see.
I see a Saturn opposing Mars, and then it's going back down to Pluto, right?
Good
Like
for
the
you,
sea?
girl. Good for you. Good for you. She's got it. She's got that T-cross. See it? And Pluto is the planet of kidnapping. Okay.
Hold on. So with her sun, I'm looking at her sun right now. So none of that's afflict. Hold on.
Sun is at 19 Aquarius, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's right next to Mercury.
Yeah, let's look
and then you got her Venus. What, at the 7th house?
Okay, so if we look at 19 Aquarius, and if we go to there's a semi-square between that planet, the sun, or not the planet, but the sun and Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
That's 45 degrees. You got 20 degrees in Pisces, 10 degrees. Wait, am I right? Wait, 10 degrees, 21, and then you got another 20 degrees. Wait, 19, 20. No, you got 30 degrees. I didn't read that right. That's not a semi-square. The moon is in Capricorn. And let's see what it's doing. We know it's opposing a wide orb, very wide orb to Saturn. And it's a wide orb conjunction to Mars. So the moon is kind of pulled into all this. But Pluto squaring over here in Libra, okay, if you look at Pluto, That's squaring Saturn almost perfectly. Okay, and Saturn, Moon, Saturn, Mars, Pluto. So the moon is pulled into this Mars because it's within orb. Moon has a wide orb. So what you're getting is, because the moon is pulled in, you're getting the kind of like the impressionable young child energy, which is the moon, the child, that was very vulnerable to this Mars here, squaring off to the kidnapped planet of Pluto. And Saturn, which is, of course, she's lucky she survived, quite frankly,
So,
because that's
so anything is like anything that's conjunction that's gonna like hurt you more.
it can if it's a negative planet. For example, Mars and the Moon. It's a
Right.
wide orb. It's almost what 11 degrees, but it's still, I see it that way as an aspect, because Moon's also in Saturn's sign. It's in Capricorn. Mars is in Capricorn, which is again Saturn's sign, and then you've got Saturn in the Moon sign, Cancer. So
Dang.
you see, and then these are all cardinal signs. He could have easily taken her life. He didn't. Thank God she got out, and they captured this guy. But the point I'm getting at is she's lucky she survived. Quite
Man,
frankly,
that's crazy, man.
I don't know all the circumstances.
Man, if somebody knew this beforehand, they could have stopped it.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. So she also is Jupiter wide orb to Venus over here. So, but these are in Pisces. So Venus is trine Saturn here, and Uranus. She's got a grand trine from Uranus to Venus to Saturn, wide orb, but it's here. So I have a feeling that her sun is also in trine to Pluto. That may be why she's
Yeah, and then but you don't count that Chiron.
I don't use Chiron. If you want to use it, I don't tell you not to. Yeah, it's to me, Chiron interpretations are generally very weird. They're kind of not specific. They're general. You can make them fit. Like I say, you've got thousands of asteroids out there, and why do you pick 2 or 3 and 4? Why don't you pick all 1,000 of them? You'll be befuddled. In my book, in the Cosmic Key to Astrological Prediction.
What I was thinking
I can't hear you, breaking up.
You hear me now?
Yeah, when you move
You
that
hear
way,
me now?
I hear you on that side.
All
Yeah.
right. Now that's what I was saying. Since that's common, it has to work with it, because then it blocks off. Like if it's like basically doing the eclipse on that certain planet and it's blocking off that certain frequency, so it has to be doing something. You know what I mean?
Well, let me say this to you. I wrote an article in the Cosmic Key about asteroids and their supposed influence. Okay. I'm not telling you not to use them if you find them useful. I never tell a student not to study or use anything. I say, find out for yourself, whatever you think, and you may be right. Okay. I'm not 100% always right, but I think I've been doing this for 50 years and I don't think there's much to them. But like I said, I don't discount it. And if you're using them and they work for you, keep using them. Okay. So, let's get.
My comment was on my son, and it basically explained how my whole childhood too. Like, man, it was wild, because I like looking at everything.
Oh, you should. And I'm not discouraging you from doing that at all. This is, this was a doctor. Oh, he came with his girlfriend. He had a young girlfriend. And she was very pretty, very young. And he's a doctor, a surgeon. And he wanted to do the reading together with his girlfriend. And I said, are you sure you want to do this? Because I said, I'm very upfront about things in the chart, and whatever I see, I'm going to tell you. And unless you really feel comfortable sharing her life and her chart with yourself, don't do it together. He said, oh, no, it's good. We have no secrets. First thing I said to her was, you were recently just raped. And he didn't know it. And he was shocked. And he said to her, did you just were you raped? She said, yes. I said, why didn't you tell me? Because you would have killed him? She says, I wouldn't tell you because you would have killed him. So, you know, it's a funny thing about charts. You know, sometimes I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I tell people very often, I said, don't do these together unless you know each other really, really, really well. And be honest, because I'm going to tell you what I see. And I also knew that this relationship wouldn't last. It was never going to last. But you noticed this guy's chart, he's got Mars conjunct Saturn. He is very possessive, very the controlling guy. He tried to control.
And that's Mercury too, right?
He's got, no, it's not Mercury. It's Mars and Saturn joined at 17.
Okay.
Both 17. And then also, no, you're right, honey. Mercury's right here, and the moon and the sun, because when you have a constellium like that, they all join together, even though they're far apart, even by this.
I was gonna say, even though they're more degrees, it's because they're all right there.
You got it. When you see this kind of thing, a constellium, you just read them all together. I don't care what the rules are. You know what I mean? I've been doing this too many years. Don't go for, oh wait, the sun's too far away. It's 16 degrees from Mars, when we're going to use maybe 15 degrees or maybe 12. I say baloney, not when the sun and the moon are together. What does the sun and moon mean together? What do you think that meant? What is it? What is that occurrence when the sun and moon are together? Are you talking? I don't hear a word. Somebody talk. Jeremiah, were you?
Okay, so the moon is like your soul or subconscious, and then the sun is your spirit. So it's like your feeling, your thoughts, your like put together. So I would think that it means, depending on what house it is, wouldn't it mean like you're able to like put the two together?
You know, it's the seventh house, the house of marriage and union. So there also that meant that that meant this was right on a new moon. When the sun is passing over the moon, or the moon's passing over the sun, right? That's called the new moon. So
yes.
they're only about 10 hours from a new moon. Okay, when they were together. So, but the most important thing is this Pluto is 17 degrees over here, and Uranus is 18. And it's exactly opposite Mars and Saturn. It's a very controlling man. And he thought he could keep her. He thought he was going to keep her. I knew it would never last. It couldn't last.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, I see it because you can see, because Mercury means communications, and Mars and all that you're saying is bad. So he's like, he was messing, like, talking bad to her and stuff.
Well, he thought he could control her. He thought he had that Saturn, Mars. Saturn wants to control and Mars wants to get angry. And Saturn wants control. And so he had this beautiful young girl, and he wasn't going to let her out. But she did. I don't think it lasted. I think she was pretty much together, this girl. So anyway, these are just charts that I was doing, and I have this one here. This woman came to me for a reading, and her husband was a bodybuilder, an abusive guy. He threatened to kill her if she left him. She was trapped in a marriage with 2 boys. And if you look at, I want you to look at this chart. What's happening in this chart?
I know her moon's natal. Square to freaking Mars, Venus, Mercury. Well, she's right doing Jupiter. So she has like a good personality.
Yeah, she was beautiful. Yeah. The thing is that if you look, Jupiter's conjunct the moon, that means a great soul. Remember, Jupiter's always great. It's magnanimous, remember? And it's joined right with her moon, which means she's a great soul. Okay. And then right away, you know, she's a very compassionate woman. Very, I mean, she would have, she give herself openly. The soul is the woman. It means I'll give it completely myself to somebody. And unfortunately, she did it.
Yeah, she's good.
So you look at Saturn up there, it's wide orb. It's, but if you look at the main planet that's there is Pluto. Pluto is at 4 Scorpio, and the moon is at 8, and Jupiter at 8. So those are squaring each other really well. And then Mars, if you look at Mars, Mars is right on the opposite side of Pluto. This man could have killed her, quite frankly. Okay, because Pluto, the planet of death and dying, is in Scorpio. It's opposing Mars and Venus, which is joined together there. And it's all squaring the moon, which is her family and her children. And the thing that saved this chart, I mean, that kept me feeling that she could get out of it, was their Jupiter here. Jupiter being on that.
Yeah.
Remember, I told you that many times? Jupiter always gets out, usually gets out and gets saved. Jupiter is the savior. Remember that. Always remember Jupiter is the savior. He's the savior. So she managed to, with my counsel, I really told her, don't, you know, change your locks, do not let him in. He slept on the porch, if I recall right, when she locked the doors and wouldn't let him in. He slept on the porch all night. So anyway, he was an idiot.
That's good.
Yeah, and she managed to finally get him out of her life. But anyway, they were noticing then how the woman becomes the victim again. Jupiter squaring Pluto up there, and then squaring Mars. It's a T-cross, Mars, Pluto, and the moon and Jupiter. So you got a T-cross again. Can you see it real well here? This is Mars, it's opposing over here to Pluto, and it's squaring off here. And these are fixed signs. Remember what I said about fixed. What did I say about fixed signs? Help me.
Stubborn.
Say over.
Stubborn. They
Good
like they're
for you.
stubborn.
Good for you. Good for you. So this is a woman that tried to hang in there and make it work. And because she kept coming back and trying to make it work, he kept getting his foot in the door again. And then he'd become an asshole again and start threatening her. So she was really scared of this guy. So anyway.
Dang. It's like, man, it's like the women, they just try to control that inner beast.
Yeah, that, you know, these kind of energies are the reason I'm doing part of this is for you to understand something, that when you see women's charts afflicted like this, you're very often seeing a victim's chart. You're not seeing a perpetuator of some violence. You're seeing somebody that's a victim all the time, like the 14-year-old girl. And so often Pluto's involved in that aspect. I see Pluto.
So what you do with those type of people? You just, like, you know what I mean? Like you brought them off to the side and you gave them a little tick, like a little conversation.
You teach them praise, thanksgiving, and faith in good. That's what you try to do. Faith in good, faith in God, if you would. You know, that's something that is the metaphysical aspect of this whole thing. You help them deal with the consequences of what's going on in their life in the most positive way you can. Because if you're moving, here's what I've learned in life. If you're moving out of fear, you're going to make a mistake. Did you hear this one? If you're moving out of fear, you're going to have a problem. If you're moving out of love, you won't.
You said move out of love, not fear.
You got it. You got it.
Yep.
Yeah, basically, like, man, don't make any kind of decision while you're in an emotional state.
Yeah, especially if you're
Remember,
anxious.
that's that have intentions, not expectations.
Say that over again. I like that. What was that?
Have intentions, not expectations.
That's very good. I like that. See, that's what makes you a counselor, those kind of things. teaching people these things are the little one-liners that they can hang on to and start to see. So when you're counseling people, you're going to be trying to bring them above the project or the subject that's causing them a crisis. But you want to teach them how to deal with a crisis. There's only one way to deal with a crisis, and that's praise and give thanks and trust in good. That's really the only way. And it's not easy when you got fear involved. Fear of your life, fear of threats, somebody threatening you. But you know, those people that are threatened generally are really miserable human beings. And they're usually bullies. And as long as they think they can get away with the bullying, that's going to continue to work. So I taught her,
saying, man.
I taught her to be brave and stop being intimidated by this guy. He was a bodybuilder. He was physically very strong and all that, but you know, truthfully, deep down, he's a coward.
They're gonna be like, there goes Jeremiah on 6 o'clock news. You know, he done went over to the weights and whooped his ass. There he is again.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, what I want to do is I just want you to see the axis. How many of these planets, how many times we saw Pluto involved in these crosses, and Saturn and Mars, okay? And these are the three very hurtful planets. You know, if you're looking at a person to work with and, you know, you're going to let them in your life, you want to do their charts. You want to know what's going on because it uncovers a lot of things. Look at Pluto's secretive. Pluto's not going to tell you anything. Pluto's very secretive. That's one of the things is Scorpio sign is what? A secret. So it's all about that. Very often sexual stuff. You know, I've done charts
and then Saturn's in their 12th house.
Saturn in the 12th in Scorpio, yeah.
Those bad secrets.
Yeah. You know, that's there's so much here. And very often, by the way, you know, we're dealing with sexual abuse with these kind of charts, you know, very strong. So she's these are look at all these red lines in this chart. I haven't even begun to tell you all the stuff that's here, but the bottom line is I want you to see the crosses and understand them. And this is the dark side of astrology in a way, but it's really important that you get a grasp of it. So let me go back. Go ahead.
Oh man, I'm just thinking like, man, that's crazy. It's like women just let themselves get with like that.
You when you turn to the right, your voice breaks up. I don't hear anything. When you're turning to your left,
No,
yeah, you turn to your left.
He was just saying that it's crazy how, you know, women go through this. Like some women have to go through this and deal with this.
Yeah, you know, it's true. It's true. And I think that one of the things you're going to find out when you're doing this work is most of the clients you have are women, quite frankly. You know, men don't like to kind of, I mean, it's like a man doesn't want to pick up a map and read it because he thinks he's going to figure it out himself, you know, he's got all the answers.
Jeremiah is going to change that though, because
hey, I'm gonna start whooping ass, boy.
He's going to start opening men's eyes so they'll finally, you know,
Yeah.
He's going to specialize in helping other men.
Because look, I could do it. I could prove it scientifically and metaphysically and whatever and the stars. It's like I got it down. They're gonna believe me or not, boy. You gonna which one you want? You want it scientifically, facts, or you just want to do it the spiritual way? I can do both.
They all go together, don't they? You know, just really. I find that people first of all, I don't try to convince anybody of anything. I've learned in my life, you know, there's a man convinced against as well as of the same opinion still. A man convinced.
Now, what I try to do is when I try to get to a subject like that, I try to like irritate the person. I try to make him seem like he knows about it, but then we end up arguing about it. And then when we argue about it, and they're like, oh shit, you gotta trick them, mind trickery.
Yeah, I don't argue with anybody. If they have an opinion and it's contrary to what I believe, it's a waste of time to try to convince them, in my opinion. You're only going to get into an argument, and they want to be right, and you want to be right, and the next thing you know,
That's what I tell Jeremiah. I said, like, I used to love to argue with people all day, but then I realized like that was costing me my peace. And for him, what I tell him is like, make yourself unattainable to them. Like
Yeah,
you're
but
there, you're above them.
I don't mean like argue like y'all. I guess I messed that up. I don't mean arguing as arguing. I mean arguing as communicating, like being talking back and forth. I just use argue to him because I'm always arguing
Oh,
with
you're
somebody,
talking
but
about like an open discussion like you used to have with our
yes,
neighbor.
yes.
Yeah, okay. Like they ask questions and you just able to provide facts of everything. Yeah, I know what you mean. That's an open discussion.
yeah, another thing too is that I a lot of people have never studied it. They've never looked into it. So how can they form opinions if they're so opinionated?
So what I start them off with, I start off with like imagine like man, they fish a lot. Most people fish. So I'm like, imagine man, that moon, like when it's a full moon, man, it's a high tide, dude, and then and the world's 80% water. And then I'm like, all right. And then us, we're 80% water. So what much think you think that moon has an effect on water, and then and it has an effect on us, on the water on the inside of us as well. And they're like, oh shit. And again, they give you that, and then they give you that stare, like, damn, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
You know that. Well, hey, what did Brother Sanchez call it? It was some type of, I guess, like, oh shit, come to stare. That's what people like. You know what I mean? Like, imagine like if you're a deer and you just like deer and lights and you're just shocked. So I get those type of stares the way I kind of explain it.
Yeah. Well, we all need to communicate the best we can. And I think that I've learned, though, with many years of all this, that I could care. My work speaks for itself. And that's what you want to do. You want your astrology to work for yourself. It'll speak for yourself. I don't go out and try to get clients. They come to me because my reputation's good and strong. And the other thing in this field is I've learned also is that you want to get as many testimonials of your work as you can. It's like money in the bank. The more testimonials you have, whether it's my book, people, if you read the reviews on Amazon, they're all 5-star reviews. But those are more important to sell a product, whether it's your product, yourself, your astrology talents, or whatever it is. You need to be able to prove it. There's many forms of proof. One of them is scientific, which you talked about. The other form is testimonial, probably more important because most people believe other people, that if they said good things about you or about something, they're going to be much more interested in pursuing.
Yeah, or I tell them like some of them like planting. I'm talking about the almanac, and I was like, the farmers use the stars to plant. To plant certain things at certain times. So the stars control the plants. So what's much less, the stars control you too as well. So they're like, oh shit, I do that. That was a good one too.
Yeah. Yeah, very often though, I find that when we're talking astrology, especially with somebody that's like thinking it's anti-biblical, it's anti-religious, I got so many scriptures that I can quote to them, and it says in the first lines of Genesis that he created the sun, the moon, the stars for signs and for seasons, not just for seasons, for signs and for seasons. I remember one of the reviewers of my book, a great scholar, he told me when he wrote the review for my book, he said, I'd never seen that before, that it said for signs and for seasons. And that's what it is, and I could keep going through scriptures and quoting and proving, especially the ages, when you talk about Christ coming, people talking about Christ is going to appear in the clouds in great glory. That's the sign of the Son of Man. That's Aquarius. And he's pouring out a picture. Mm-hmm. When he talks about in the last days, I'll do what? I'll pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams. young men will see visions. That's Aquarius talking. That's the sign that's in the heaven. His coming shall be as the lightning that shineth in the east and is seen in the west. That's an astronomical event. It's not some man flying out of the sky, coming down on Earth. It's the influence of that Aquarian age we're now talking about. So, I could do this all day with scriptures. People want to talk scriptures to me, and I mean, they're running up against the worst guy to talk to, because I'll lay them out one after another in Genesis and in the Psalms and even the New Testament.
Yeah, I know in that book you have a lot of those. I like those scriptures because it proves it, because basically it's like everybody's doctrine to read up certain scriptures versus not all the scriptures.
You got it. And they've misinterpreted so many of them, So I don't know. I think that when people recognize that Saturn was Satan, that's where it all came from. And and I keep seeing revelations and seeing things that I've come to understand, and how Saturn is not all the boogeyman either. Saturn is a useful tool. Saturn is the lower chakra energy coming up the spine, called the serpent force. Satan is called the serpent. That's why it came out of that. So what happens is, excuse me, I'm starting to get hiccups again. So what happens is we have this Kundalini, which is the serpent on the staff, which is back in the days of Moses. It said Moses raised up the serpent on the staff for the healing of the nation. Christ was a master of and teacher of the raising up of Kundalini, which is that sexual energy. It's called, Catholic Church call it abstinence, keeping that energy contained, because it's a healing energy. The woman that touched the garment of Christ, but that just touched the garment of him, she was healed of an issue of blood for 12 years. She'd been suffering. And what did Christ say? Who touched me? For I behold, virtue has gone out of me. What's a virtuous man, a virtuous woman? It's non-sexual. So he beheld virtue has gone out of him. That energy that he had stored up was for the healing of that woman. The masters, these disciples, were healers. They were healers.
That's crazy.
And you look at Paul. He healed a man that was oh man, there was so many stories. He said, one story he says, and Paul beheld him. This is hypnosis, by the way. And Paul beheld him with steady gaze and said, your sins are forgiven you. Get up and walk. Wow. Think about that.
So what is the story of Lazarus supposed to be then? Because that's my favorite story of all.
Raised the dead, didn't he? Yeah. And what about the ecliptic child that the mother couldn't, having convulsions? And what do you think happened? They used the same things we're using today, which is marijuana, as a solution in an oil, which is and they anointed them with oil. What do you think oil they did? You think it was just oil? Olive oil?
So that boy, he was a medicine man.
Yeah, he was.
My grandma thinks it was olive oil because she puts it on us. My grandma thinks it's olive oil.
Nah, you need to switch that oil up, marijuana.
It's not. Yeah, it's not olive.
No, it's CBD oil.
Dang.
So we're using it today to heal epileptic children. And all this knowledge has been there for thousands of years, a couple thousand years, but we're starting to come back to it because we're incarnations of these disciples and these people that were early Christians. And so the book, I believe my book has revealed the deepest mysteries of Christianity that's ever been revealed. And that sounds egotistical, but I believe it. And, the world's not.
Yeah, you made it make sense.
So we need to know that there's powers and there's knowledge that is not always so supernatural. It's like, they knew things we could learn a lot about and learn to know. And I think we're coming back to a lot of this. The early Christians were.
Yeah, because I
Yeah,
I'm sorry about that. I feel like they just did that to basically for like a monetary like gain or something.
it became that. Yeah, exactly. That's what the church became. It was a machine for money. You know, forgive your sins, make penance, and pay us some money, and we'll forgive all your sins. You know, think about that. I mean, you know, there's so much. The early Christians were mushroom cultists. I don't usually talk about it, but if you doubt it, read the Sacred Mushroom and the Cross by Allegro, who is one of the top 10 scholars that worked on the Dead Sea Scrolls. So
Yeah, I read that book.
it'll change, you know, your opinions all around if you read it. And then think about this: when Paul, he was named Saul before he became Paul. When he was the persecutor of the Christians, they raided Christian parties for doing what? Partaking of Amanita muscaria, which is a mushroom, a hallucinogenic mushroom. It's like the war on drugs today, okay? The same thing. You round those hippies up and send them to jail because they're druggies. They're all using drugs. Well, what they did, the Romans did too, but they put them in the dungeons and they put them in places where they could be eaten by lions. They did all sorts of things to them because they were dropping out of society and living communally. Sounds like the hippies of the 60s. So they no longer participated in the purchasing society that was all about consumerism. They dropped out of it. They started sharing their money, sharing everything, and living communally. So Saul is the persecutor of the Christians, and he raids the Christian party. And guess what happens? He probably ate some of the Amanita muscaria when he was in there, wondering what these Christians are all about. He ate it. He imbibed it. Took it in his mouth. And the next thing you know, he's on the desert. He doesn't have Ray-Ban sunglasses back then, right? So what happens to him? His eyes get dilated, right? And he burns his retina. You know how long it takes to heal the retina when you burn it? 3 days. He's blinded for 3 days. Amazing, isn't it? Coincidence. He's blinded for 3 days, and he hears God speak to him, say, Saul, Saul, why dost thou persecute me so? And guess what Saul becomes? He becomes one of the greatest Christians because he saw the light, because his eyes got opened. You know what Amanita muscaria does? It's like LSD. It keeps the eyes open. Why do you think the Christians talked about if an eye be single, the whole body would be full of light? They didn't have the third eye they were talking about. If an eye be single, the whole body be full of light. You look at that child's eyes in this picture here. Hi there. You look at a child's eyes, they're open, they're dilated. You look at your wife's eyes, her eyes are dilated. There's an old wives' tale said if a man tells you, I told my daughter this, if a man tells you he loves you and his eyes are pinpointed, beware. Because if he's seeing beauty and good and he's loving you, his eyes are going to dilate. It's like a card player playing poker. What do you think they wear sunglasses for? They didn't want to reveal their eyes because they get a flush, their eyes dilate. That's why they wear
same thing with jewelers, they do that too to up the price.
Yeah, the old gem sellers in China used to know that very well. Somebody American come over to buy gems, all of a sudden the price would go sky high. Why the hell they make prices?
You dilated, boy.
You dilated your eyes. So when you look at beauty and look at good, your eyes dilate. Did you know that? So, you know, man's eyes dilate, interestingly enough, to violence as well as to beauty. So think of some of and what is the other eye dilator? The mother and child, the Madonna scene of the child, the mother and baby. And how about the bloody man on the cross for a man? Dilates the eyes. Okay, these are all eye dilators. These motifs that we've got for Christianity serve a purpose, which is spiritual, but it's not seen by those that don't know. The uninitiated have no idea what's going on. So don't get me started.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
I like that stuff because it puts you in a real perspective, because really God put us here on this earth to figure out, know yourself, and then find the truth too.
Yeah.
You're not just here, you're supposed to find, you know what I mean? You gotta find the truth. Like man, life's a lot there's more than life than just the work. You gotta find your spiritual self, because it's 90% spiritual and only 10% physical.
I like that. You know, there's this, Shakespeare said it best. He said, know thyself, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst then be false to any man. Got to know yourself first, though. And most people don't have time for that. Okay.
Or
So-
even on Arts of War too, like Arts of
What's that?
War. Even on, I was reading the book Arts of War. I can use that too. Know yourself and know your enemy.
Yeah, you got it. You know, that's part of your nature. You're a warrior. You've always been a warrior in past lives. I know a lot more about you than you think I do. You know, and so that's
Hey,
your,
I
that's
need to know because man, my whole life, man, I only got myself through everything. Nobody tell me anything. It's like, man, dang, I'm over here always trying to find myself, but man, not like with this, it helps me.
well, you're on the path. You're definitely on that path, you know, and you know, we're all on the path, actually. I'm on the path, we all are. And you know, I've got my frailties, my weaknesses, just like everybody else. And we all are doing the best we can in here, you know. And let's hope we don't have a world that's destroyed soon by, you know, and the elements scripture says, and the elements shall be melted in fervent heat in those days. And that sounds like a nuclear war to me. I'm praying it doesn't happen. But you
Yeah,
guys,
because man, if they like that,
hmm?
like they're saying, like everything in the universe comes here to Earth to be physical. Then, man, if they were to destroy the Earth, man,
Don't talk to that side.
detrimental.
Don't talk to that side. That side's the only one you can hear.
Hello, you hear me?
I can hear you then, but
I
when you
was saying like,
go ahead.
I was like saying like the Earth is like supposed to be like where everything like spiritual around the universe to come to become physical. And if they were to have nuclear war and then destroy the Earth, man, it'll be like detrimental for the whole universes.
Yeah, of course it would. It would be so destructive. You know, it's like this man is almost like Satan incarnate, Putin. And you know, he may achieve the destruction that he's heading for, you know. He will be destroyed as well. But the point being that if that's, you know, those are things that are out of our control. You know, we can't concern ourselves and live on that level all the time of fear. The best we can do is just be loving and love and stay in that pattern of thinking and pattern of consciousness. But I'm going to let you go. I hope you got something out of this session today. Excuse me, I'm getting the hiccups again. I've been having
Oh
fighting.
no, yeah, it was a good one. Do you mind sharing any of the Zoom videos? I'm gonna print a lot of stuff and make us a notebook this week because we're gonna start printing out charts and then marking them ourselves to try to find like all the aspects.
Good, good, good. Yeah, you can do that and do your children. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you my children too. He was kind of weird about it. He didn't want to really do them,
Well,
but
we're
at the
not
same
doing.
time,
Yeah.
at
It's
the
not
same
about.
time, we'd like for you to do them. And then if it's something we want to just slowly look at, then we can, but I want to have them.
Yeah, we're not. It's not about negative stuff. It's about let's look at their strengths.
Yeah,
This is where their
right.
challenges are in their life. We can look at those things, but
Yeah.
you know, it's not about being fearful about it. So I'll do that, and I'll get this. I'll get this one over to you if you'd like it.
Okay, awesome, perfect.
And then I don't know, man. I don't know. I want to hear my chart on the line so I can
Oh
figure
yeah, so
myself
I was
out.
gonna ask you so the cross that we saw earlier, was that the Grand Cross? Or what is a Grand Cross again?
That's 4 planets making 90-degree aspects to each other, or 180.
Okay, so
They form a
she had
cross.
one that was the Grand Cross.
Who did?
The one that was
Oh, the ones we looked at today.
kidnapped.
Yeah,
Yeah, she
yeah,
had a
yeah,
Grand Cross. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So and that can be very crucifying, as they say, you know. So you got to remember, you know, there's so much astrology. You know, a lot of things that we say. You've heard, every 7 years of the year of bad luck or something. People talk about that. That's because of Saturn's transit. Saturn is takes 28 years to go around the chart. So if you've got a cross in your chart, it's going to hit that point every roughly 7 years. The progressed moon does the same thing. Takes 28 years to go around that chart. So the 7 years of bad luck or whatever, you've heard that, that's a lot of it's astrological in its roots. But you're on the wrong side talking to me.
That's that Jubilee.
Say over, what?
That like the Jubilee every 7 years.
Yeah, well, that was more to do with crops, wasn't it? And planting and a lot of it, I think. They also were very close to the earth and they recognized they had to give the land a rest after so many years, which we don't do today. We keep just pumping in more fertilizers and not giving the land a chance to regroup and regrow and replenish itself. So because we got to keep those crops going all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's so much here. You've got a mind for this, and it's you're so blessed to have a wife that's right there with you along this path, and we got another half. We're halfway through. Got a long way to go yet. So I want to teach you eventually how to use the cosmic key as much as I can. Usually I don't do the cosmic key in this session. I do just astrological work, but I'm going to try to cover as much as I can. It's very complex, the cosmic key. If you read the book, you might get enough from it to do it.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've been reading the book. I just read the stories over and over again, so
Yeah.
I can like start seeing it.
Okay. Well, look, I'm gonna check out, and we'll be back on again Thursday, same time, same place. Okay. Okay. You guys have a wonderful week. I love you guys. Take care.
We
All
love
right,
you
you
too,
too,
man. Be
bye.
safe.
Okay. Bye-bye.